vaikka olisi eriin.
Mä tiedän. Mäkin panisin mua.
Right, okay. So this movie was a request by a viewer, so thank you for sending me down this rabbit hole. We are talking Bunny the Killer Thing from 2015. Now this is a Finnish movie that is spoken partly in Finnish, partly in English, and a little bit of Swedish. I will say before I start this review, the version that I saw did not have English subtitles for the Finnish portions of the spoken language section. So I haven't been able to understand all the dialogue in this movie. It's about 50-50 compared to English, compared to like the Finnish and Swedish sections. But I have missed some dialogue in this film. So bear that in mind when I am kind of talking about this review. I will try and give it the benefit of the doubt in regards to that, but I just have to kind of state that up front. Right, so what's the story here? It focuses on a group of Finnish and Swedish friends as they are going to this kind of cabin in the woods type kind of situation. Along the way, they pick up 3 English people who are stranded with a kind of car trouble, and they have their own reasons for being out there. So this now larger group of people end up at this kind of large cabin, which has got nice cabin, sauna and all that. However, this also seems to be an area where these crazed lunatics seem to have been doing weird experiments, creating human bunny hybrids for reasons that will be explained right at the end of the movie. And we have this kind of killer hybrid bunny man going around the woods, effectively wanting to rape anything that he comes across and rape people to death. Now, our friends are initially unaware of this, however, they soon cross paths with this bunny and all hell breaks loose. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. Right, so let's talk about the bunny in the room. So this is obviously going to be somewhat of a taste issue. We have a very kind of sexually provocative movie in some ways. It's not necessarily especially explicit, but the idea here is obviously we have effectively a rape monster, and that's not even the only type. We actually have a little bit of human on human kind of sexual predatory scenes as well. So that is going to be a taste issue, but let's talk about what worked in this movie's favour. Now, I've said this about a few films before, but if you are a fan of the likes of Peter Jackson's kind of early works, we're talking about kind of like, things like Brain Dead, or maybe even to a point, the kind of the Evil Dead films minus the kind of the rapey kind of stuff. It's kind of like that style of movie. A kind of like over-the-top exploitation sort of style movie with, a crazy kind of concept, over-the-top kind of characters and things like this. So there is that element of chaos and kind of zaniness in the movie. And the kind of our antagonist, this kind of bunny man who's effectively just going around with his little pecker out, or I shouldn't say little pecker, and effectively just raping anyone to death that he comes across, constantly shouting pussy and things like this. So yeah, it's kind of like very much a chaotic movie in many ways, but it does have this sort of kinetic kind of energy that kind of runs through it, and a very on the wall kind of sense of humour, if that makes sense. So it's very much kind of like bombastic sort of sense of humour, very dark, but also somewhat kind of like twisted sort of sense of humour to a certain degree. But it does have an element of craziness, an element of kind of fun, if you don't mind, somewhat of a kind of risque movie. There is this kind of thing, this bunny creature I found quite interesting. I actually found the reason why this creature was created to be quite funny, quite interesting. And I think it ends pretty well actually in regards to that kind of sort of situation. And it's a memorable antagonist. Let me just put it like this, and it kind of seems pretty dangerous. And the interesting thing here is that this is meant to be someone who is mutated into a kind of like a creature, but it looks deliberately so like someone in a large bunny suit, and you'll kind of know why at the end. I actually could have quite liked some of our characters here. I mean, they are somewhat kind of like, it is a silly kind of sense of humour, but the characters are played reasonably straight to a point. Well, some of them. We have some like crazy kind of police characters and things like this. There's a zany plot revolving a kind of a kidnapping. But some of the kind of the interactions with our sort of characters do seem a little bit more kind of normal. So, you know, you do have a degree of buying into the kind of the characters to a certain degree, particularly kind of like some of the interpersonal relationships between our sort of characters. There seems to be somewhat of a connection, shall we say, between some of them. And that is played relatively straight. So the movie does have this kind of mix of the kind of the absurd, but also elements of being more grounded in at least some character moments at certain times. I think the VFX are a lot of fun. I mean, the bunny man, you have to understand why he looks like that, and it's kind of a deliberate choice, which I kind of, you know, I appreciated what they were doing there. It's, yes, he looks like a guy in a bunny suit, but there is a reason for it. Generally speaking, though, there's some fairly good kind of gore effects, and it's quite fun. There's also some really nice kind of quite nice kind of wide shots where we see like a kind of vista of this kind of snowy kind of background, few external shots where we kind of see like the kind of the moon and things like this, and it looks really nice, and you know, almost looks Christmassy in a kind of a weird way. So I sort of quite like the kind of the cinematography here. Once it gets going, it's kind of quite fast paced, and this antagonist does seem legitimately dangerous. And there are some kind of fun moments. For example, we have this kind of group of people that are being chased by this bunny, and then it's gradually sort of catching up to one by one. And yet there's these two that are still kind of flirting and stopping to kind of flirt with each other and things like that. So it has this kind of like off the cut of the cuff and weird sort of sense of humour. What doesn't work, obviously, this is going to be a kind of a taste issue here. You know, not everyone's going to be interested in a rape monster. Let me just say this. And until you know the reason why this kind of bunny creature looks like this, it kind of, you may initially think the bunny creature kind of looks a little lame. It is an in-story reason for that. Let me just say, there are some elements here where I felt there's some plot elements where I felt were underdeveloped. As I mentioned, there was a kidnapping kind of subplot in this. That to me seemed unnecessary, and I didn't really feel paid off. The people behind the bunny monster, again, I felt were a little bit kind of like ill-developed to a certain degree. I don't think this movie is necessarily trying to be a really thoughtful movie in regards to tying up kind of loose kind of plot ends, to be honest with you, and more being like this visceral kind of horror comedy experience. But nonetheless, there are a few elements here that I felt were just seemed to be kind of left on the table to a kind of a certain degree. I think some of our sort of characters seem a little bit kind of ill-developed. There's a couple of characters, particularly those you never really see interact. There are a bunch of people in this kind of house who we never really see much of the interaction with. They tend to be often little sort of subgroups, and as such they feel a little bit sort of discombobulated. And you know, it's kind of arguably a kind of homage, if we're being kind to the kind of, as the aforementioned sort of Peter Jackson and kind of Sam Raimi sort of style movies. I don't think it's quite as kind of iconic as those ones. It's certainly a kind of a fun movie, if you don't mind, somewhat of kind of a risque kind of material, and it has a memorable villain. I will give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's a fairly fun film. Like I said, I was missing some dialogue here, so some of the kind of, certainly of the finished characters and stuff, there's a girl with like a mask. I don't know why she had a mask on. I'm sure it tells us. So yeah, there are some elements that I may have missed. So just bear that in mind whilst you kind of refer to this review. But overall, it's a relatively fun movie. It's somewhat throwaway, but 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me comments, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.